So as we begin our work with dividing decimals, we are going to be looking at place value patterns. So we have done place value patterns with whole numbers when we divide by powers of 10. And we've done it when we multiply decimals, multiplying decimals by powers of 10. And so now we're going to look at dividing decimals by powers of 10. So you are going to be able to solve place value or powers of 10 equations by using patterns. So the first problem that we're going to have is this, where it says Chandra wants to cut a cloth into 10 strips. All of the strips should be exactly the same size. How long will each strip be? Well, the total length of the strip is 89 and 5 tenths of a centimeter. And so we're going to take that value and we're going to divide it by 10. So first we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some place value patterns when we look at this. So when I do place value patterns, if I do 1, as if I take 89 and 5 tenths and I divide it by 1, so that's 10 to the 0 power, I get 89 and 5 tenths. If I divide 89 and 5 tenths and I'm going to divide that by 10, my decimal is going to move one place to the left and it's going to be 8 and 95 hundredths. And then if I'm going to do 89 and 5 tenths and I'm going to divide that by 100, notice here my exponent says 2. I also have 2 zeros, so I'm going to move my decimal 2 values to the left. So it's going to be 0.895. And then my last one is going to be moving my decimal 3 places to the left. Well, if I look right here, 1, 2, oops, I ran out of numbers. And remember, we talked about when you run out of numbers, you put a 0 either in front or behind. And so in this case, I would put a 0 in front. And so it would be 0.0895. I ran out of room there, so it looks a little funky. So there's my place value patterns. Notice as we look at this, so if I start by dividing by 1, the decimal doesn't move. When I divide by 10, the decimal moves one place to the left. When I divide by 10 to the second power, here the decimal moved 2 places to the left. And then when I divided by 1,000 or 10 to the third power, the decimal moved 1, 2, 3 places to the left. So we're going to be using our work with the place value patterns to see what our solutions are going to be. So if we take a look at the convince me at the bottom of page 302, it says, suppose you have a rope that is 293 and 5 tenths centimeters long. Okay, let me just rewrite that. So 293 and 5 tenths centimeters long. And then if I cut the rope into 10 to the first power, equal pieces, how long would each piece be? If I cut the rope into 10 to the second power, how long would each piece be? How are the quotients you found related? So the first one that we're going to do, I'm going to do this one in blue. So 10 to the first power, I'm going to do in blue. And when I do this, if I am going to be dividing, so I'm going to do 293 and 5 tenths, and I'm going to divide that by 10 to the first power. Now, if you remember, 10 to the first power is 10. Okay, so 10 to the first power, I'm going to take my decimal and I'm going to move it one place to the left. Because I'm dividing by 10, my value is going to be smaller. So my new answer is going to be, if I move it one place to the left, it's going to be 29.35 centimeters. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this value in black. So I have 293 and 5 tenths, and I'm dividing that by 10 to the second power. And if you remember that 10 to the second power is 100. So using what we know with our place value patterns here, 10 to the first power, I have 1 0 behind the 1. 10 second power, I have 2 0 behind the 1. The exponent tells me how many numbers to move my decimal. The zeros also tell me how many numbers to move my decimal. So when I do this, I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the left. So I'm going to go 1, 2. My answer is now going to be 2 and 935 hundredths of a centimeter. So when we look at how these two values are related, 29 and 35 hundredths of a centimeter and 2 and 935 hundredths of a centimeter. This value right here, the 29, is divided by 10 to get the 2 and 935 centimeters. So this quotient, the second quotient, is equal to this value being divided by 10. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and move into your guided practice. So making sure that you guys are jotting these down as we go along. So number 1 says, suppose Chandra wanted to cut the cloth strip into 10 to the second power. How wide would each strip be? So if you remember, she had 89.5 centimeters was the length of her strip of cloth. And now I'm dividing this by 10 to the second power. And when I divide by a power of 10, so when I divide by a power of 10, I'm going to move the decimal to the left. Okay, so we just need to remember that when we divide, we move the decimal to the left. When we multiplied, we move the decimal to the right. So divide means left, multiply means right. Unless we were multiplying by a value less than 1, and then that changed how we were multiplying. But here, when I'm dividing by a place value pattern or by a power of 10, I'm moving the decimal to the left. So here I'm going to move the decimal to the left. The number of times the exponent is, so I'm going to move it 2 times. So I'm going to go 1, 2. So my new answer is going to be, so notice I just wrote it in blue, is going to be 895 centimeters. So 895 thousandths of a centimeter is how big each strip of fabric is going to be. Okay, number 2. Krista divides a number by 10. Then she divides the same number by 50. Which quotient is greater? How can you tell? So if I take a value and I divide it by 10, or I take a value and I divide it by 50, I want to know which quotient is going to be greater. The quotient that's going to be greater is going to be the quotient that I divided by 10 because there are less pieces. Okay, so here I have 10 pieces that I've divided it into. On this one, I have 50 pieces that I've divided it into. So dividing by 10 is going to be the greater quotient because I have less pieces. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our place value patterns. And we're going to set these up to look at them. So I'm going to get these up on the screen for you, and then I will continue on. Look at our first value. Our first value that we have is 370 and 2/10 divided by 10 to the second power. So when I'm divided by 10 to the second power, that means I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the left. So my decimal is going to go 1, 2. My new answer is going to be 3.702. So my answer is, I know that looks like a comma. It's not, it's a decimal. So it's 3 and 702 thousandths. 7 and 25 hundredths divided by 10. So I'm going to move my decimal 1 place to the left. And so when I move it 1 place to the left, I'm going to put my placeholder for 0, decimal 725. Okay, 281 and 4/10 divided by 10 to the 0 power. Remember that 10 to the 0 power is really 1. So the decimal is not going to move here. It's going to be 281 and 4/10. And then the last value that I have that we're going to look at on this set of problems is 3,642 and 4/10 divided by 10 to the second power. I'm going to move my decimal 1, 2 places to the left. So it's going to be 3, 6, decimal 4, 2, 4. So that is the first set of problems that we're going to take a look at. I went 3 through 9. Now I'm going to take a look at 4 through 10. So give me just 1 second to get those set up. And take a look at our place value patterns for this set of problems. So this first one is 10 to the first power, so 126 and 4/10 divided by 10 to the first power. The 1 tells me that I'm going to move the decimal 1 place to the left. So my answer is now going to be 12 and 64 hundredths. 72 and 5/10 divided by 10 to the third power. I'm going to move my decimal 3 places to the left. So 1, 2. Oops, I ran out of numbers, so I'm going to add a 0 and then move my decimal one more over. So it's going to be decimal 0.0725 is going to be my answer for that problem. 2,810 divided by 10 to the fourth power. If you don't have a decimal, you need to remember that the decimal is always going to be after the ones place. So in this case, it's the 0. So I'm going to move my decimal 4 places. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So my new value is going to be 0.2810. And then my last one is going to be 364 and 2400ths divided by 10 to the first power. So I'm going to move, because I have a 1 here, I'm going to move my decimal 1 place to the left. So it's going to be 36 decimal 424. Okay. So what you're going to do at this point in time, you are going to work on your independent practice. For your independent practice, I would like for you to do 11 through 25. You're going to do 11 through 25 odd. And then you are going to do 26 through 28 all. You're going to do 30 through 32 all. So on the back side, I'm not looking for problem number 29. So you're going to work on those problems. Again, you are not doing all of the front side of your independent practice. You are just doing the odd value. So you're going to do 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23, 25, 26 through 28 all on the back, and then 30 through 32 all.